This is about cleaning up your inbox. I've done this in the past for organizations such as Providence, working through the steps on cleaning up your inbox. And one of the things that I found is that unless you have a purpose, unless you have change management, then it just doesn't stick. It's just something that it's just a cool hour to kind of watch someone do something like on TV, but you don't come away with anything. So what this workshop is about, it's about how to create the plan to clean up your inbox and create your own change management process. I'm going to give you a couple different processes so you as change managers can figure out which ones you like the best. Okay. There we go. So our goals, we got 2 goals today. Number 1 is increase your productivity by cleaning up your inbox and creating your process so that you can continue this flow, so that you can keep going on and continuing to be productive. So the whole center of this is about your own productivity. It's about your own performance, bringing up your performance, figuring out how to make yourself more productive at work and in life. And then what do we do about the emotional and cognitive processes that drive these behaviors that that affect our inbox? And so I'll be looking at those and giving you some tools. Now, in the material here, what you should have gotten is you should have got a copy of this PowerPoint, but then I also supplied a workbook. And so the workbook has some call outs. Now, you do not need to have the workbook in front of you. You can just have a piece of paper and I will guide you on what to write. The workbook is simply there as a guide as we go through the process of places for you to write. Yes, you are going to be writing these. And so you're also going to be chatting. So open up your chat window. Because I'm going to be keeping an eye on the chat myself and making sure that, I'm going to be asking you questions and then responding back to what you say in the chat. So let me open up my chat on the side here. Okay. So there we go. All right. So my first question for you that I want you to put in the chat is, how many items do you have in your inbox? How many items do you have in your inbox? All right, low numbers. I saw one. There's a high one. There's a high one. Oop, there's a couple over 1,000. Ooh, it's 6,000. Ooh, yes, those are 3,000, 4,000, 2,000, 3,000. So my guess is that some of you already have this process in place, which is really great. So, and I'm hoping that your takeaway will be to go through some of the change management and kind of go through a description of what you are going to, how you do change management on yourself. Sometimes as change managers, we're really good at changing other people and we're not so good at changing ourselves. Other times we have one method that we go off. I'm going to give you a couple of different tools here that maybe you can try out. So if you see something that you've never tried before, that maybe you say, hey, I'm going to try this as a different tool and see how it fits. If it works, it's great. It's something you can add to your toolbox. But if it doesn't, that's okay. This is a safe space where you can try this. So there's some of you that are really could use this because it looks like your inbox is really crowded and some of you are keeping it nice and clean. So this will be a nice reminder. Okay. This is kind of what some people, I imagine, with us more in their inbox feel like, that, that your inbox is a little bit out of control, that there's so much stuff in there that it's really kind of the sense of overwhelming when you look at your inbox. I imagine that if it's large and it kind of goes on and there's a lot of unread in there, that you can kind of look at it and go, oh man, this is not where I want to be today. And how do I get through all of these? And what's going on here? As far as it can create kind of a mental and cognitive interruption to your day. It puts you kind of in a place where you already feel behind if you have a lot of emails that are already in there that you haven't dealt with. And so a cluttered inbox, okay, if we put on our lean hats, and I know that there's lean practitioners in here, okay, this can be considered waste. A cluttered inbox could be considered waste. So again, this is where I'm going to ask you in the chat, what type of waste, what are the classifications of waste that you would have if you had lots and lots of stuff in your inbox and it was cluttered? You know, if you think the word cluttered, you think of lots of stuff in terms of, and if you're thinking of the acronyms, there's downtime, there's YTOM, there's W bummer, there's all sorts of different, the 8 wastes and the 7 wastes. I got a series of about 15 different wastes that I go through and I check out with different places. And so sometimes we can classify these as different wastes. So if we put on our lean hats, is this an opportunity for us to be able to apply lean to our own lives, or to give this lean to someone else? So I see inventory, I see waiting, I see time spent rereading something already read. It's like, what a waste there. Lack of prioritization. This is great. And now spreading this a little bit further. It's okay to be adding in waste, but what about problems? What other type of problems? Just like rereading the same thing. Does it cause stress for you? Does it cause lack of focus? Are things getting lost? Are there other types of problems that you have when you look at that inbox and it's just got too many items in it? What are the things that are some of the problems that you feel? How do you feel about that? Get anxious if I don't have a scroll bar. That's kind of a trigger. That's a sensing trigger that says, oh wow, something needs to happen there. Terror, you know, when you think, oh my word, it keeps going and going and going and going. The bogs down the logical sequential mind. This is, I mean, we're all in this to really help people be productive, to try to do process. And this is kind of an area where we're going, this is an opportunity. And sometimes that opportunity, we have so many other things on our plate, we don't really see that opportunity. And so it just adds a little bit more stress. We get messages from email, Teams chat, Zoom chat, text messages, too many channels. Future time wasted. It's like you're looking at that, it's just like, oh boy, that's a lot of stuff to do. So there's a real, you should begin to feel when you hear clutter, it's like, this is something that if you haven't felt it before, that this is something that it's like, okay, this is a problem. This is something that I feel that it's something that's tangible. It's that tangible thing that I have an emotional reaction to that doesn't feel good. And so that's your starting place for change. Feeling that you're missing something. Boy, that's a great one. So I pulled this out. Okay, I pulled this out about a month ago from LinkedIn, and I am embarrassed to say that I can't find the original source on this, but this is about right. Okay, about $1.7 trillion spent in labor costs or managing email. Now, if you think about the hugeness of this, the enormity, because our GDP in the U.S. is $25 trillion. This would be 1 trillion of that. Now, we're more knowledge workers. This is how we communicate. This is a serious cost problem if we're spending all our time rereading messages, having to search through stuff, having to go through this, and when the statistic was per year, it was trillion per year, but I don't have the back to the original reference. But This is a cost to businesses. Now, one of the things I'm going to kind of get into, one of the problems with this is that in Jim Quick talks about this in Limitless. He talks about the Zeigarnik effect. Now, Bluma Zeigarnik was a psychologist back in 1927, and she noticed that waiters would come up to her table, and they wouldn't even write anything. They would remember these long orders. They would remember all the details. But when she went back and talked to a waiter about missing a scarf, she had lost her scarf, he couldn't even remember her. And he didn't know about her scarf. He had forgotten all this stuff. And she's going, how could he have such a good memory at the moment, but forget all this stuff afterwards? And so we find there's this effect that if we have unfinished business, our brains will latch onto this and it will hold on, it will hold up space onto this business until we actually finish it. And then what it does is it kind of files it away. It says, okay, I don't have to have that in the active part of my memory. It files it away, and it doesn't take up that mental hard drive. And so our brains aren't as simple as a hard drive, okay? But what it does is it's trying to focus on those things that that you need to do. Now, marketers and advertisers taking advantage of this, take advantage of this, and they say, hey, we'll do a cliffhanger, okay? Or we'll have some sort of marketing device where people are waiting for the next thing to happen. And that's where they kind of bring it to the mind. If you've seen a movie where it ends and there's another section of it, it keeps us thinking because it preys on that Zeigarnik effect. Now, another thing that happens is that the Gottman Institute has identified that this is one of the drivers for betrayal and distrust in relationships, is that people will hold on to unfinished business. And if there's that, if certain things aren't talked about, or if they're just sort of brushed under the table, our brains hold on to these things. And so when we look at our inbox, there's a lot of unfinished business. It's not the size of it. It's the anxiety that there's something in there not done. That's the Zeigarnik effect. And that's kind of what's getting us. Now, task switching, cognitive shifting, and multitasking. Task switching is where we shift our attention. I've heard before that task switching is where we focus on one thing and then we shift and we focus on the other. That's cognitive shifting. Now that has taxing on our brain. Our cognitive abilities have to they have to shift gears, and they have to get into a different process. Task switching is slightly different because it's an unconscious thing. And so we have a whole stack of emails. We might be focused on one thing, but there's other things that are catching our attention so that we can't primarily focus on that one thing. And then if we try multitasking, there's a lot of debate about whether the brain can multitask or not. And so what I'm going to propose here is that our cognitive brain, our focus of attention, our spotlight focus is on one thing, but those other things are being processed in the limbic system, are kind of a natural processing thing. This is the thing that keeps us walking or driving or those types of things, where we should be spotlight focused on our driving. We can actually text and drive. We can kind of look down and kind of text, and our brain is looking at this, and our limbic brain is keeping us on the road. But that's not really safe, because we really need to have those cognitive functions focused on the road. Now, to bring this back, this is where, it looks like somebody has found that number. Thank you, Jackie. This is where we really need to be able to take that spotlight focus and focus on the things that we're working on. Now, in Stephen Kotler's book, Flow, or the Art of the Impossible, when he talks about flow, when we're in flow, we become more focused and more engaged. If we're scattered, if we have a lot of task switching going on, if we're distracted by other things, we can't get into flow. And so if we can focus on a smaller inbox, we can get into flow. If we have more in our inbox, it causes stress, anxiety, and possibly even helplessness. Okay, what's getting in our way? We're getting our own way. This is just technology. It isn't doing it to us. We're doing it to ourselves. And so the first thing that um, I'm going to propose this is that we have limiting beliefs that kind of keep us into this idea that it's no use. It'll always be there. There's always emails coming in. So again, I'm going to ask for your chat messages here. Besides these limiting beliefs, I'm going to talk through these. What resonates with you, or what you have a specific limiting belief that you can add to this list? So on this limiting belief, that there's a limiting belief that there might be too much information out there. There's a limiting belief that if I start working on cleaning up, I could get interrupted. That there's this need to keep everything. And so I'll be talking about the different functions of the inbox, because there's actually 3 functions of the inbox that we've kind of combined together and made it, there's guilt. I'll reference that later. I'll do that later. There's too much to do, or I can't find anything. Those are the types of things that get us stuck. Keeping found things found. How do you get it so that it's in a list, it's in a huge list? Do I mark it with a red spot, and then do I mark another one with a red spot, and do I not? I mean, those are the types of things. What if I delete something important? That's a key thing, because one of the things I'm going to ask you to do is to delete everything. What? I'm going to ask you to delete everything. And if you can't, you're going to do something with it. But this is kind of the basis. Okay. I like this. Things will auto delete after a year anyway. I can imagine that's terrifying if you've got a really long inbox. What's going to go away at the end that I really, really need? So those are the types of things. Possible root causes. What's keeping us here? What are, besides the limiting beliefs, what are some other things that are keeping us here? When we start digging down, when we start using our, we could probably fishbone this or go down on the, but as a group, we can probably go through and come up with some other root causes besides this. But I'll walk through these. But think of some of the root causes that's keeping your inbox full. One of them is technology and complexity. Sometimes, somebody mentioned before, we've got Zoom messages, we've got team messages, we've got email messages, we've got this whole big bundle of technology that's being thrown at us that we have to keep up with all these different lists. And we got to go here, we got to go here, we got to go here. More social messages. We're also being attacked from the outside by people that want our time and our money, advertisers, clickbait, those types of things that are putting up oh, you've got to read this, or you've got to go to this conference, or you got to do this, you got to open this message now. And so you've got a whole bunch of that in there where you're going, okay, I don't know, I don't recognize the sender, so I'm just going to put it aside. I'm going to put it aside. And what happens is that you add to your list. Satisficing is Steve Krug has this book on kind of looking at why people are the way they are with web pages. And what will happen is they will choose one way of doing things, and they will stick with it, even if it's not the best way of doing it. And so what I'm going to be asking you here is take a step back and kind of replan what you're doing here. And then figure out if there's a better way of doing it. Because satisficing, the thing that gets you is that you're always working with a solution that is suboptimal for you. And if you take the time and actually learn it. Now, many of us we didn't get any inbox training. They just said, here's your inbox, good luck with that. And so that's where people went through and they really said, okay, I don't understand where I'm going through this. And then the misuse of reply all or forwarding and stuff like this. Those are the types of things that really can get us. So before I move on, Talia, is there anything hanging out in the questions window?
No, I think you've got so many folks chatting in the chat that you're doing good. No questions.
Excellent, because I'm looking through, I'm seeing subscriptions, I'm seeing duplicate chains, I'm seeing unnecessary subscriptions, um, too much information coming at us in today. It feels like the fire hose most of the time. Um, there's the idea to need to respond to instantly to everything. Boy, that's something that something will come into our box. And what also happens is we're programmed through our phones. Our phones make a little ding sound, or they make a little notification, or they're in their pocket and they give you a little vibration, and you go, oh, I gotta check it, because it might be something good, or it might be something bad, or I better go do it. And so there's this it's, sorry, I just got an emergency test warning from Bellevue College, so I had to take a moment. So we've got some things that are keeping us in place here, and now the benefits. Okay, now that I've been talking about the bad stuff, what about the benefits? What is this going to give you? What is the type? What are the types of things that are going to give you? Um, is this Could this reduce your stress? If you had a smaller inbox, could this reduce your stress? Um, could you have more of a sense of control or a sense of accomplishment? Okay. So now what I'm going to do is I've given you some of you. I put the notebook out there. I put the workbook out there. And so now, if you want to keep on going with this, the best thing to do right now is to think about your motivation. Think about the things that are getting you to where you want to be. And so on page one, I've got two blocks. On the first block, those personal pain points, those things that you wrote in the chat, or something that you looked at the chat and you said, "Oh my word, that is so me." Those pain points. What is your pain look like? And I want you to write that in the first box. What is your pain when you do this? What is your biggest fear? What is your biggest pain? What do you just get angry about or upset about or helpless about? What are those things that happen? And then in the second box down, I want you to write out, how will this help you? How will this benefit? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you a minute to write. And so if you can do this on a piece of paper, you can scratch this out. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you a minute to write, and then we're going to come back and we're going to start launching into how do we get there. So give me 1 minute. All right, hopefully you have some ideas in there as far as what is your pain and what are the benefits. This is part of your proposal to yourself. What are you going to avoid and what are you going to benefit? Now, for all the projects that I've done, if I try to do process change, I can come in and I can implement, I can do projects and stuff like that. If I don't pay attention to the cognitive and emotional things that keep us where we're going, the limbic system, the emotion system, those types of learning, the types of way that we have sorted the universe so that we can kind of figure out how to manage our stuff. If I don't address those and I just say, do it, nothing will happen. Sometimes people will find change management in themselves. But what I'm really trying to do is I'm trying to say, okay, how can I help you in your head? How can I help you get to where you need to be? And if you've, since we all do this, I'm hoping to give you some different ideas with change management that you can take away. So the idea here is to go from that cluttered inbox to the managed inbox using process change and change management. Now, this is based on two references. One is Take Back Your Life by Sally McGee, and this was really a Microsoft book. This is really a Microsoft book. It's how to integrate Outlook with OneNote, and that was a great integration. But it has some ideas in it that I think are really good for making sure that you're flowing the information so that you're using it in the right way. Now, there was a lot of references to Merlin Mann's Inbox Zero. And the best reference I found was a Google presentation he gave. It's about a 40-minute presentation that he gave to the folks at Google about how to get to your inbox to zero and what that entails. So these ideas that I'm giving you are really those types of things. Linda, I see your question. What would be the best practice for managing email threads and saving the email? Hang on to that. I will see if I can get that out later. And if I haven't, readdress that after we've gone through the steps. So, okay, change models. So this is the, these are different kinds of change models. Now, what I've done is I kind of have these up here for a reason, is that we have the Bridges model, which is really about transitions, motivations, the Broadwell model, which is about competence, the Lewin model, which is about acceptance, Kubler-Ross, we've seen that, where it's really about the emotional change. We also have the ADKAR method, the PROCE method, which is like overcoming the lack of understanding and creating a compelling case for change. The point of these, and if you go over to any of the ones like Toyota Kata or anything like that, there's always a dip before things get better. And so that's the promise of change models, is that it's something that we have to go in and reframe our thinking. We have to go through and do some stuff. So you have to kind of expect that there's going to be a lag. This won't get better tomorrow, but it will eventually get better as we go. So these are kind of a conglomeration of all the different models. I'd love to go into each one of these, but we're just going to go over four of them, four different types. I've got four different types of tools that I'm going to give you after I go through the process. So the inbox, what is the inbox? Okay, the inbox is the place for incoming emails. It's your communication place. It's the place where you communicate with, where other people communicate with you, and typically you communicate with other people. But it's also actions. People are asking you to do things. It's also a place where you're collecting information. Sometimes your voicemails go there. Sometimes you can direct certain messages so that it's your collecting system, so that information from the universe gets collected through your inbox. And so we're going to talk about how to set this up as a collecting method and how to set this up as an action method. And then that reference section, these are the things that you just can't get rid of. It's a tip sheet that someone's given you. It's a reference that you need. It's a link that someone's need. And some people leave it in their inbox because they don't know where to put it. Nobody's giving them training. They go, okay, I can find it in my inbox if I search for this term and I filter for these things, and I can find it under this, which is about 1,000 down if they don't delete it in a year. So is there a better way of storing all your cool stuff? So that's what we're going to talk about too. So I'm actually breaking this up into different sections here. So the first section, your action list. Your inbox is a set of actions where people are asking you things. They're asking you to do things. You might be communicating with them. You might be emailing them. You might be setting up a time to meet with them. You might be putting it on your task list so you can do it later. These are the types of things where now I want you to think about what are those types of actions, and can you categorize those types of actions? Can you create your triggers for your actions? And so some of the things that are coming in, if you can you look at it and delete it? Boy, that would be, for some people, that delete button is so scary. And so what I recommend, what they recommend in one of the books, is that they say create a folder that just has the word delete on it and just stick it in that folder. Just move it over to that folder and pretend it's gone. And if you never look at it again, that's great. So that's one of the ways you can do this. The undo button works pretty good. Is we delete something and you want to get it right back away. Sometimes you can get it back, or if you don't empty your trash, the delete button shouldn't be scary for you. That's one of the things that will help you with your email management. Is if your delete button isn't scary, it's a tool for you to use to clear out that clutter and not have to look at that line on your email and say, is there something else I have to do with it? Get it out of the way. Is it a resource? Do I need to put it somewhere else where I can find it and won't be deleted after a year? Now these are the things that are, now this is where managing email threads and saving the email, that becomes more of a resource. If you think of those email threads and say, I need this string to be a resource so I can go back to it later, treat it like a resource. At that point, if you've gone through the email thread and you've done all the actions, if it's an action, like something that gets scheduled, schedule it. But if you're done with it and you're saving it and you're going, I need that conversation for this piece of information, treat it like a reference. And so when I get to references, that's where I'll suggest. Can you do it right now and delete it? Can you just do the action, respond back, boom, done. Can you send it to someone else? Hey, can you do this? And delegate in a way so that you never have to see that email again. And I'll talk about that in a moment because that's an agreement you have to make with people. Can you schedule it? Can you hit that schedule button on your email? Do you have integration between your calendar and your email? Most of them do, and sometimes you have to go find it. And then can you put it on a to-do list, some sort of to-do list that helps you prioritize it if you can't take care of it right away? So these are the types of actions. These are the types of actions that are proposed. Now you might have a different action. You might have something else on this, but these are the 5 different actions that I'm going to start with to say, okay, great question about, are we managing their task-related work communication the right way? And that gets down to the root cause of, we're using this as a collecting system. If we're managing activities the same way we're managing communication, we might be running into a problem. So we might have to rethink how those activities that come in, we might have to rethink how we're taking care of those. So I want to pause for a moment about responding to emails. Now, one of the things that's proposed by both Inbox Zero and Taking Back Your Life is responding directly back to an email and then deleting the email from off your list. This is from Michael Bushmole's. Michael Bushmole is a local resource. He's been a speaker at a couple of different places. He's great on marketing and presenting yourself, building your own brand. And he suggests a couple of things in responding to email. Number 1, respond to one reader. Even if it's a group, respond as if you're writing to one person. If you get something that says, hey team, y'all are doing this, people may not be as engaged as if you write it to the one person, because they can only read it from their perspective. And so if you write it to that one person, they're more apt to read it. Put you in the first sentence. Make it personal. Put you in the first sentence. Get your message across in 3 sentences. Don't spend a lot of time writing. You might be a writer, and go through and condense it. Read it twice. Make sure you got the ask down before you start composing or apply. And never write anything negative in the email, and don't reply to angry emails, call people up, and put your ask up front. You might even put it in the subject line. In some cases, what I've done for some organizations is I've just put the message in the subject line and then put EOM at the message, so they know that as soon as they read the subject line, they don't even have to open the attachment. They can just delete it from there. So these are the types of things. Have a plan on responding to email. So now I want you to go back to your notebook. what are the types of things, define your actions. What are the types of things that you are going to trash or archive? What are those things that are coming in? What are you going to respond to? Who can you delegate to? Can you schedule these things? Can you plan? Can you make a plan? And does it go to the file? Does it go to some sort of resource file? The other question to ask yourself is there a rule behind this? Is there a rule that drives this type of thing? So I'm going to give you a minute to work on your workbooks and decide what are the classifications of emails that these would go to. And so I'll give you a minute to kind of fill this out in your workbook. You can follow, if you have just a blank paper, just follow along with this chart here and kind of go through and figure out what are you going to do with your email. Have a plan now, because that's going to be your plan for the future. So I'll give you a minute on that. Okay, so this gives you kind of the breakdown of what's going to happen here. Now, remember when I said delegate, you're going to delegate to someone. Now, there might be times when your response time, how much time that you respond back to people, you might need to loop them in, because sometimes when you go through and create this list, you might say, okay, well, I'm going to go through and I'm going to start responding to people right in the hour, and then I'm going to focus on work and I'm going to respond to people. So you might have to make an agreement with people. You might have to figure out, okay, this is how I'm going to respond to you, or this is how I'm going to delegate with you. This is really kind of the defining your actions might be something that you have to do with your list. And so review your list and figure out if you're going to have to respond to different people. Now, I see that there's a question in the chat about archive versus file. Okay. Now, archive is, so when I talk about filing, I'm going to talk about that in a few minutes here, in terms of where do things get filed. Archive might be the same thing to you, or archive might be, I'm going to put that in my delete folder. And so the archiving is more of, when I hear that, I think of putting aside old information. You might want to take all your old inbox items when we talk about cleanup and put them into an archive to say, I'm just going to kind of put them off to the side. I'm going to pretend that they're deleted. I'll put them in an archive so I save them, but I'm going to treat them for deleted so I can kind of get to my place I need to go faster. Reference system, great segue. So there are so many different types of reference systems. The book, Taking Back Your Life, uses OneNote. I like using OneNote because I can take it and put it in there and I can search everything, including the PDFs inside, but Outlook has gotten good on that too. Teams might be a place where you live and put stuff in the filing system. You might have SharePoint, or sometimes just having Outlook folders. You just stick everything in your Outlook folder. Nothing wrong with that. It puts it aside. Now, to kind of go back to Mark's question, is that archive versus file. If you're filing it, it's something that you're going to be using for the future. It's a tip sheet. It's a document. It's a conversation that you need. You treat it like a resource. And if that item that's in the inbox is a resource that you will need, then file it. If an archive seems like stuff that's really old and you want to save it for a long time, it's kind of in that boat. you can create a different category if you'd like back here and say trash, or I see what I see. Archives. When I had the word archive, I meant it's gone. It's in that delete. So I can see the confusion on there. Let me go. So define your reference system. So on page 2, I've got think about what you want your reference system to look like. And when you build your reference system, what do you want your folders? If you have Outlook folders where you want to save stuff, what does those folders look like? If you use SharePoint, what are some files that you would want in SharePoint? And so be thinking about what are the categories of references. And so when you're going through your reference system, think Pareto. So think Pareto, think 80-20, that you're going to have, don't try to have little tiny buckets, think bigger buckets that more stuff can go in, and then use the technology to find it within that bucket. So tend to think of fewer categories rather than greater categories. So if you can put a bunch of stuff like 30% into one bucket and it makes sense to you, because this is your place to be. And then what you do is you would build your references as you go through and do your references. So on the page 2, examples of references, the application that you would probably use, and then the list of categories down at the bottom. I kind of need to push us through, so I'm going to give about 30 seconds to work on that. But think about the types of resources and then bundle those in the bottom into categories. What would be the categories if I were to take those resources and put those into a couple of different categories? So on the bottom of page 2, go through and figure out what those list of categories would be, and I'll give you about 30 seconds to write that out.
And I just want to say, if folks are out there listening and you want to you want to jot this stuff on the side, but you don't have the document, just let us know in chat and we'll repost that. I'm pretty sure everyone has it because I haven't seen anybody ask.
Okay. So the next thing is, this is going to be your collection system. So I talked about the actions. So I talked about the actions, and I talked about the actions, and I talked about the references, the collection system. Now you're collecting. So I saw a question in before about what happens if you have Zoom or Teams or all these different channels that are coming in. And if you can get these Zoom messages and voicemails and everything like that into your inbox, so that when it comes in and you have that plan of action, and you say, I can take this message, this voicemail message, and schedule it. I can make a scheduling item. I can take that that Zoom message or that Zoom recording that came in, and I can put it in my reference document. This really gets it to that point where you're using your inbox more. You're probably putting more in your inbox, but if you have a good action system, then you're leveraging your action system and your reference system. And so these are the types of things that you want to be thinking about. What are there messages coming in from other locations? Is the requests that come in, say, like on Post-its or on the phone, or things that get dropped off of your desk? Is there things that don't necessarily hit your inbox but can go there? Are there appointments that are made, little appointment cards? And so those are the types of things. Rochelle says it's helpful to communicate with your coworkers. That's why it's important to create the agreements, not just create an action plan, but make sure that everybody is involved in that too. What about voicemail, meeting action items, written lists? These are all types of things that if you think about how they fit into your collection system, you can leverage your inbox to be more of a collection system for your life, instead of being that cluttered email where things just sort of go and stop. So clean up your collection system, add in anything that needs to be part of the system. What are those things that need to be part of the system? What else do you need to be collecting here? And then can you block anything that has no value?
You're going to be tempted to touch them, and I don't want you to.
Oh, please mute your mic.
Oh,
Sorry about that, Eric.
that's okay. Block anything that's not actionable. This is the part where you get to go in and unsubscribe to all those things that are cluttering up your email. You might have some things that you subscribe to that are really important, but when people are out there, they have access to your inbox. All of a sudden, you get all these lists, and hitting the unsubscribe down at the bottom gets these uncluttered from your list. Now, taking that 10 seconds to hit unsubscribe and going through and clicking the button, that's 10 seconds of anxiety that you're saving yourself. If you're looking back to your pain points, that's 10 seconds of pain that you're relieving from your life, or 10 seconds of benefit that you're paying yourself forward. So these are the types of things to be thinking about. Now, there's an activity in Take Back Your Life called Unclutter Your Mind. And basically what you do is after you've set up your system of collection, you go through and you think, what else isn't in going through my inbox? What are some things that I need that I could plan using this action system? What are some other things that I could use using my reference system? So on the bottom of page 4, these are some things what are some other things that you could use to declutter your mind? And at this point, I'd like to re-engage you, all of you out there, and ask you what other types of things, knowing that you've got a collection system, you've got an action system, and now you've got a reference system that you're setting up. What else could you build into your email system, into your inbox system of collection and action that you could put in there? Is there anything that you would want to share in the inbox or put on your list of how to declutter your mind so that you can focus on what you're doing today? Give a few moments for that. Oh, great. Put in a weekly appointment for myself to organize. This is a great priority of projects and calendar settings. Yes. Excellent. And I'm hoping that when somebody puts something out there or put something in there, it kind of gets those innovative juices going. Major milestones for the week. Tasks that need to be done. Awesome. Pending things, tasks waiting on responses from others. Oh, that's one thing that kills me. I hate getting rid of it if I'm waiting for something, so I have to put it in a special pending action list. Storing goods, storing wins, those types of things, putting a kudo. One of the things you can do is if you have a specific file and those days that you're feeling overwhelmed, that you can remind yourself to go look at the kudo list and say, how am I doing a good job? That will help your attitude and help you get through some of this stuff. It puts your mind back in gratitude. Discussions, threads, low touch things. Monitor others. We'll go for about 5 more seconds. Excellent. Okay, so now that we've kind of looked at our system of how to manage our inbox, then we need to get to that next section of cleaning up our inbox. We need to be able to get rid of that stuff in the inbox. So method 1, they talk about this and they kind of joke about it. They say, first of all, go through and delete everything out of your inbox. And it's just like, oh, what? It's like, okay, you don't have to delete it. You can actually put it in a folder that says delete. But honestly, for most people, for most things, if it's over about 3 weeks old, it's probably not important. Okay, you might need to keep the reference stuff, but the conversations and the actions, if those things are hanging out there and you haven't put them on a calendar or something like that, and you expect to go back under that list, you're probably going to be reminded in some way or another. It's probably going to pop up back up to the top of your list. These are the types of things that come up where if you go through and you say anything older than about 3 weeks, I'm going to set off to the side. I'm going to scan through the list and see if there's any reference things that I need in there. But I'm just going to archive it. I'm going to put it in a folder called delete, but I'm not going to delete it. Then 6 months later, did I go back to that delete folder and get anything out? Is it worth it to go back in there? That's kind of the big question. And so that's what I recommend is kind of a good way to start. Now, this will help you mentally is if in any of your projects, you can demonstrate the first step has been completed. And in this case, the first step, if you just move it over, that first step is completed and you're near to the goal. This is something that's in Switch that helps us to really kind of motivate us emotionally is if we have a big push and a bunch of stuff gets done, we become more inspired when we see progress. We get stuck at that first step, but if that first step is easy and we can just kind of put it off, that's one of those things that really helps. And then going through and starting to filter for things. Now it's really easy to look and say, okay, I want to get rid of all of the acknowledgments that I made that to a calendar item, or if it's hit the calendar, you don't need it in your inbox anymore. So there's a way to go through and filter out for things. There's a strategy that you can take to really look for how to get your inbox cleaned up. But cleaning off your inbox really takes a commitment from you. And so the thing that here's kind of the plan. This is the implementation of cleaning up your inbox. Figure out how you want to do it and set up realistic goals and rewards. One of the things I'm going to talk about is rewards and consequences in terms of how to motivate it. And so if you can go through red tagging, I love the idea of red tagging. If you can create an action list and then have some rewards and consequences to drive those actions, you're more likely to do them. The other thing that I really promote during the implementation of this as part of the change management process is, first of all, if you have a plan, if you have an action list, you have to train yourself. I mean, if we go through this during this hour and a half and come up with you come up with a really cool action list and you put it in a drawer and you forget about it, because we all do that, you forget about it. It's not going to do anyone any good. But if you go through and you go, okay, I've got this action plan, I'm going to make agreements with other people and I'm going to train them, but I'm going to train myself on what to do if I see this, what to do if I see this email come in, or if I start to see the scroll bars on the side, that's my signal to myself that I start to get uncomfortable. I start to not panic, but I need to take action. So those are the types of things, and then use change management to transform and sustain. So here's what I'm going to propose on change management. There are so many different ways for change management. If you've been doing this for a while, you've probably hit all sorts of different ways to change. And I love the results seminar we had a couple months ago on where they took the ADKAR method and adapted specifically for the organization. Those are the types of things that I love to see, because one size does not fit all. One size does not fit all. If you can adapt what you have, if you can mix things together and make it really work for you, that's the best plan. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you 4 different things. You've probably heard of them. Maybe one of them is something that you don't typically use. But plan your case. Build your purpose. That's the first one. Plan to motivate. How do you use motivation and rewards to drive behaviors? Track process with metrics. That's one of the things that I just talked about, is when you start cleaning up your inbox, use metrics to guide your success. And the last one is making it easy. And I'm going to talk a little bit about heuristics. This is about how to make it so that it's easy to do the right thing. So the first one, the call to action, and this is on page 6. This is something that, what is your case? You can go back to page 1 and look at the benefits. You can look at the pain, but what is your call to action? Can you build a compelling action for you to make a difference, to make that inbox smaller. How do I make it so that it's aligned with what I want for the future? What is my goals for the future? Do I want to be cleaning this up all the time? Or do I want a future where I just click a button and get stuff done? You know, reframe it. If there's a lot of limiting factors, if there's a lot of root causes that are getting in your way, how can you reframe your purpose to fit your story? Because this is your story. You're writing it. You're writing your story as you go. And so if you create your own purpose, then you write your own story. Another way of doing this is think about you as somebody else. You're writing somebody else's. You're saying, I want to create a persona, and then I'm going to live that persona. So this can be your future self. This can be your future self having a really small inbox. What kinds of things will that future self be able to do? What is that future self going to be able to find? How productive, how inspiring, how creative is that future self going to be when they're not cluttered through a big old inbox? And then the final one, I'm going to put this out. This is a Tony Robbins trick, is what is my identity? When I talk about my inbox, what is my identity for my inbox? And if you want to see another way of seeing lasting change is make it so that if your identity is partly hooked to this, you say, I'm going to be a more productive person. I'm going to be more of this type of person. And your values, you're going to make up internal rules that make you keep that inbox small. So these are the types of things that you can put in for your purpose. So I'm going to give you 30 seconds here to write in, what is your purpose for a smaller inbox? I really appreciate Alenka's in the chat. Ensure I'm taking care of today's work today. So inspiring, and it's something that you can create as your identity. I'm taking care. I can own this. I can take accountability for this type of work. And so that's another thing, is that when you have a purpose, you get to drive your own accountability. You get to own that because it's your future. And so I have a section in that page. I think it's on that page where you can drive your, it's on the reward page. But if you're thinking about accountability, is what are the types of things that can keep you driving towards your purpose, that can keep you on the path of cleaning your inbox? Motivation is a powerful thing because all of us humans are wired for motivation, okay? We're looking at rewards and consequences. What is the reward that I get if I do this? And what are the consequences? The natural consequences are those things, those bad things that happen to us that we don't want to have happen. For example, a natural consequence of a cluttered inbox, something gets wrong and I miss a deadline. And if that affects me negatively, that's a natural consequence. And so these are the types of things that drive your reward and your consequence. Now, I do this activity in several of my classes where I talk about what are your rewards. And I have the class go over a set of rewards off a reward sheet, about 20 or 30 different rewards. And Nobody comes up with the same exact reward. There are always a couple of different classes of rewards. And the important learning here is that everybody has a different reward system and it's right for them. Sometimes we don't even take the time to figure out what our rewards are. What are the types of things that drives our behavior? If we know, we can use that to our own benefit. Peace of mind that I haven't missed something. If that's your reward and you can put it out and you can identify it, it's not something that happens as an unintentional result, but if you can say, wow, I did this. One of the things that I've discovered in some of our hormonal, the way our hormones drive us, is that if you're done with a task that is like a manual task, like cleaning the kitchen, you're done cleaning the kitchen, and you look over and you take just a 5 seconds and admire what you've done. You go, I've done it. That's a physiological response that releases dopamine into our brains, and it will lock that into place. It'll make us feel better about doing it. And so if we can understand our own rewards and our own consequences, we can lock in behavior. Now, this is a terribly difficult thing in work because nobody talks about consequences anymore. That's kind of a thing, but there's natural consequences that aren't punitive. They're natural consequences to point out. So if somebody doesn't show up for a meeting and you say, hey, you do some call in and say, what happened? That's a little bit of a negative consequence, but it's done in a caring manner to where people are called in instead of called out. It's a great way of building in accountability and natural consequences. So here's how you want to schedule. You want to have your rewards for when you have your good behavior, when you're following your action list, when your listing's going down, what are type of rewards that you're going to get? And then what's the consequence for old behavior? I'm letting things go. I'm leaving the old planning system. The old planning system was I just let the box fill up. So what are those consequences and what are those rewards? So I'm going to give you another 30 seconds to be thinking about this, brainstorming, put it on your sheet. What are rewards for doing good behavior, and what are some natural consequences that happen if you ignore and go back to your old habits? Okay. I'm going to move on to the next. The next motivation, the next change management process is track your process. If you don't measure it, you can't show the progress. You can't show the improvement. And so this is a way to figure out how are you going to measure success. And one of the easy things that you can measure here is how much are your inbox cleaning. You can take that number that you started with. If it's a really high number, you can take and put that in kind of the first of the chart, and then figure, I'm going to track this on a daily basis, or I'm going to track this on a weekly basis. And if you can see progress, if you can see that change happening, it becomes more realistic. That becomes the driver for some people, where some people are motivated by purpose and identity, and some people are motivated by rewards and consequences. Other people see numbers, and this is where I start to dive into data analytics and visual measurements. This is the type of thing that people need to see when they're doing this. You might have a thermometer that says, this is the thermometer, and as I go through and I clean up email, I'm going to build my thermometer up till I'm to the top and I've cleaned up all my email. Whatever makes sense to you is the type of metrics that you would use. You have to do it every day. Maybe you do, maybe you don't. Maybe you say, okay, I'm going to check it once a week. And so you have a reminder saying, I'm going to check my email, the number of emails I have once a week, and chart it. it's best to have some sort of baseline, to have some sort of plan of action. And so on your worksheet, I have a how are you gonna measure it? What is your target? And so now we're kind of getting over into Six Sigma territory. If y'all are, if there's any Six Sigma gurus out there, we're starting to get into that data analytics. So what's your metric? What's your target? How often are you going to measure it? And then how will you know that you're there? And so these are the types of things where you can go through and you can go, okay, so on the bottom of page 8, it talks about some of the metrics that you can use to figure out how you're going to get there. So I'm going to give you another 30 seconds to talk about metrics, to think about some of the metrics that you use. Okay, now, the last one I'm going to talk about is making it easy. Now, in the book, Happiness Advantage, Sean Achor talks about learning the guitar. And if you're trying to learn the guitar, and the guitar is in the closet, the chances of you learning the guitar are probably low. If the guitar is right next to the couch where you watch TV, if it's within reaching distance, and you see it, and you might trip over it, okay, it's going to make it easy, okay. What are the types of things to make it easy to follow your action plan? Now, this is a visual from the Nielsen Norman Interaction Design Foundation. I'm putting a lot more usability and user experience in more of my classes because it's really change management. You might want to look in some of those areas because you can get a lot of change management tricks from user experience and the types of things that they're looking at, especially in visual designs. What are those things that are going to remind you? Do you have a little sticky note at the top? Is there a little chart that you would use that matches what's on the computer? Is there some standardization behind it? Do you do the same thing over and over again? Do you have little reminders rather than having to remember what you're going to do? And so this is a way to figure out how you can make it easy. And I'll give you about 30 more seconds. This is our last entry in the book. I'll talk about the next one, but brainstorm some ways of how you can make it easy. Now, what I've done here is you can write at the top, or you can draw it. That's a good way of getting into your right brain. And when you get into your right brain, all sorts of amazing, innovative things come out. So I'll give you 30 seconds for that. Okay, now we're at the last slide. We're at the place where we all wrap up here. We've got all sorts of plans in place. And what I'm going to encourage you to do is go through each one of your workbook pages and put it on this. What is the action? Do you need to set up your action plan? Do you need to create folders? Do you need to create a reference section? Do you need to go over to OneNote and create a bunch of pages, a bunch of sections in there? Go through and figure out on the pages what you need to do, transfer those to the what. Those are your what items. Those are your action items. Those are the things that are going to get you moving. Who is probably going to be you unless you need to talk to someone. You might need to talk to your work team about saying, I need this time to answer emails. So this is what my response time is going to be. And the key to this is, when are you going to do it? Now, it's great to have an action list for something like this, but realistically, when is it going to get done by? And the best time to do it is right now. If you can start having some sort of activity right now, right at this moment, maybe today, maybe later today, sometime this week, Whatever is right now to you is the way to take action with something like this. Thank you for following me on this cleaning up your inbox and this little divergence over to change management. I hope you got something out of this. I really enjoyed presenting this information. Talia, was there any outstanding questions?
No, there's not. You've done a great job of following along with the chat. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you so much.
This is awesome. Oh my goodness, that was great. Hey folks, do you have any questions you want to jump on your mic or offer your thoughts? I'm so excited with this.
Is Teresa out there?
Say it again.
I
Teresa,
am, yes, sir.
Yeah.
could you explain, could you give your personal experience with cleaning up your inbox?
Oh goodness, yeah, I'd love to. I was telling Eric before, here, let me spotlight myself so you guys can see me. I was telling Eric before we started the call today that I went through Vital Smarts Getting Things Done training, which is very similar to Eric's training today, and it honestly has changed my life. I can attest to everything that Eric mentioned today, like the reduction of stress, the anxiety, just being in a better headspace in general, knowing that, you know, I have less to manage, less to respond to, just by simply sorting. I am a folder freak, so I definitely have the folder method through Outlook with communications that do come through Outlook, and it has changed my life. So I was really excited for this training today because it's something that's changed my life. So I was hoping that, you know, you guys got some benefit out of it. So love it. Thank you, Eric.
And I will also say that I too at HCA when I was there, I took the Getting Things Done course, and immediately after I too started doing the organizing. I will say though, when I switched jobs years later, I backslid and I started going back to the unorganized way. So like my inbox isn't always beautiful. And I really appreciate this because this refresher is getting me back into that mindset. And I also wanted to say something I noticed with Teresa. I don't know your inbox, and I believe that it's super organized because when she sends out emails, she'll have in her subject line, this is an update, this is an action, this is a request. And so in addition to sorting your emails when you get them in these files and folders, you can also become organized in your communication out to help folks see right away, hey, this is what this is pertaining to. And gosh, could you imagine if we all just did that? We have such easy communication in the subject line and know which folder to put it in. But thank you, Eric. This was so awesome. Who would know that just a presentation on managing and decluttering your inbox would be so much deeper than what it sounds like, right? I love how you tied it into the cognitive behaviors and like going deep into the roots of our learning styles and what causes us to do what we do. So I love this. Thank you. Let's open the mic to anyone else who has any comments, feedback, input, questions. We're here for you, community. What you all think about it? Got a lot of good comments in the chat. So helpful.
Looks like Eli has their hand up.
Yeah, I just want to plug Eric. He's a former professor of mine. He at the change management program at the University of Washington. And if you ever have a chance to take any coursework from him, more than, you know, like a quick little seminar like this, I highly encourage you to take advantage of that. So nice to see you again, Eric.
Great to see you, Eli. I've seen you've been doing a lot of things with organizational change management.
Ooh, I
Do that, take that training.
Yeah. After that program, I kind of jumped in with both feet, and over at UWIT doing change management enterprise-wide. So my biggest audience was over 100,000 people impacted. So yeah.
Yes.
So I
Yes.
went, anyway, thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, I appreciate the call to action in the last slide for sure. Yes, Ron, thank you. What actions will you take and when? Yeah, we got to hold ourselves accountable to not just having an idea, not just talking about something, but when are we going to do it? Love it. Professor Stewart, thanks for bringing it. That was
Right on,
awesome.
right on.
Okay, well,